Oh, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hey. Turn up my headphones here. How's everybody doing this morning? It is Friday. It's still Friday morning officially here in the central time zone. So I am calling it Friday morning uh, coffee with Jason. But today we're going to talk about something specific. I'm gonna ramble on about this Apple thing here for a few minutes, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of just like hanging out. But I do want to make a comment that will. That will sort of stand as my statement about this whole kerfuffle about this commercial that Apple has been victimized by. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So I've got a little bit of a Justice League hangover where like just 4 hours. 4 hours is a long time. We did it all in one sitting. Did it all in one sitting, and it was fun. It was fun. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. We may have a special guest pop in here in just a little bit. I don't know, but for those of you who haven't seen this Apple commercial, I'm going to share it so that we can kind of watch it a little bit here off of the Verge website.
Hello, I'm Justin. Just a real person doing a real comparison of Mac and PC. These are all PCs. Yeah, Intel. Well, it's just a lot of that. That's so cool. And I've never seen a screen like this before on a laptop. Wow. Let's see over here. So these are the newer Macs? Okay, so gray and gray here.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that that's like one of the. I saw. I'm sure there are a couple of them, but that's one of them. And I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why there wouldn't be sound. But if there wasn't, I apologize. Basically, okay, here's what he said. He's like, "Oh, these are all PCs, and all this one opened my face, opened itself with my face, and look, they're all colors." And then he looks at the Macs, and they're like, "Oh, here are the Macs. They're gray and grayer." Uh, Another commercial that I saw, he was just kind of like he made fun of the dongles. He Yeah, yeah. So the big question here with this thing is, well, okay, there are a couple of questions. One, um, one, the question is number one, does Apple deserve this? Question number two, is Intel the the place for this to be? Are they the people to bring this message to us? And three, um, is it funny? So I've been watching on Twitter a lot of different people's reactions to this, and I'm surprised actually how vociferously people have been reacting to this series of ads. Um, a lot of people who are well-known Apple advocates. I don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I am like as much an Apple fanboy as the next person. As you guys know, I go back and forth about Apple, but I always come back to Apple. So I'm not necessarily an Apple hater here, just taking the opportunity to punch Apple while their nuts are exposed, right? I'm not doing that. But at the same time, uh, I do really feel like I do really feel like Apple has opened themselves up to this kind of trolling for years. And as such, they it's weird because as such they've opened themselves up to this, but nobody has ever, I mean, Samsung has done their thing, but Samsung always turns out to look stupid when they're doing theirs. And so because Samsung like makes fun of Apple in a commercial and then turns around and does everything else. I mean, Intel at least has a vested interest in in keeping their business alive. Um, and the thing is, like, I look at it this way. Um, it doesn't really have anything to do, in my mind, with the with the whole Intel versus M1 chip. I mean, I'm not going to argue that the M1 chip is not an amazing leap forward in processors for Apple and probably for everybody else, and that likely means at least a significant ding in Intel's business unless they go toward the ARM chip thing. But but let's taking that out of the game, taking that and putting it off to the side, because Apple has had this reputation of like this sort of untouchable hubris. Like they can do anything, and anybody will and anybody will sort of take it or lose or whatever. And it's just kind of like I'm I'm glad that somebody has done this. I mean, I imagine that Louis Rossmann is like, rolling over in his rolling chair or whatever it is. Although they didn't mention right to repair. The thing is, Apple has had a long history of how should we call it, customer hostile practices when it comes to developing their products. Um, so not only do we have the 2016 redesign of the Mac took away all the ports and left us with USB-C, which is where the dongle thing comes from. But I mean, they took away the headphone jack. I'm never gonna forgive them. New T-shirts coming on headphone jack. I don't know. Some people say maybe it's a few years late to complain about the. I don't know. It's still like yesterday to me. So they've done that over the years. There have been little kerfuffles about. I think it was the iPhone 4S antenna gate. I think just the keyboard thing, the touch disease thing, and Apple has just kind of like changed things with their products over and over again, and not really cared whether or not it was good for the consumer. Um, the thing that's interesting to me is, when Apple made those "I'm a Mac, I'm a PC" commercials, um, it was a response for Apple was basically calling out Intel for the same thing that not Intel, but Windows, which of course has Intel and a lot of other people invested in that. But Apple was calling out Windows-based world and saying, everything's locked down, everything is only do it this way, everything is this, that, and the other thing. And they they basically were saying we're the solution because we care about people. We let you do things. We're the more creative solution, etc., etc. None of those things are not untrue to this point, but and Justin Long, the actor who plays the Mac, was like a cool hip young dude, right? And the cool hip young dude was doing his thing, and Apple and the Mac was the way to do it. And then the PC, John Hodgman playing the PC character was, buttoned up and very like, and very, I guess, stodgy, stuffy. So now Intel has this idea. Now, I thought it was very interesting when Apple did their event back when they introduced the M1 Max, and they brought John Hodgman back, the PC, and he had a funny little bit there at the end of the thing, and then, but there was no Justin Long, and I was kind of like, why didn't they bring him? Maybe they didn't feel like they needed him. Maybe they tried to get him, and there was a scheduling conflict. Maybe they didn't try and get him at all, or he said no, or who knows? It could have been any number of things. But he wasn't there, and that kind of surprised me. So now we have him kind of doing this thing where he starts out, he says, I'm Justin, just a regular guy looking for a computer, and pointing out all these things that have changed about Windows computers that now are in stark contrast to Apple computers. Windows offers you ports. Windows offers you flexibility. Windows offers you the chance to play games. Windows offers you a lot of different things, whereas Mac takes away the ports. Nobody develops games for Mac, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just interesting to me from a historical standpoint, having lived through both of the things, that Apple was the underdog, and they could take pot shots at Windows in general and look like the hero. It's all optics. Like if Apple's the underdog and they take pot shots at the big guys, then they're looked at favorably. And now what happened is Intel, or whoever does Intel's marketing, saw an opportunity, right? They saw an opportunity to dunk on Apple. And so they hired Justin Long. They made these commercials. The commercials in my mind aren't necessarily about Intel. The commercials in my mind are more about the difference between Apple and Windows as it exists right now, right? I still think that over and above anything else, Apple's quality control is and their design and everything like that is a step above a Windows computer, until you get to something like, right now. Okay, so I'm using this Razer Blade 15 from last year right now to do this live stream because my M1 Mac just decided it wasn't going to do it the other day. So I'm using this. These Razer laptops are incredibly well made, and I have right now a Razer 13-inch that is it's not a gaming laptop. It's like a 13-inch. I forget what they call it. I'd have to look back at it. But anyway, this 13-inch, it doesn't have a discrete graphics card. It has like the Intel graphics in there. It is small. The processor is snappy. It's a productivity machine, and if you put it right beside a MacBook Pro 13, the Razer Book 13. That's right. Thank you, Aditya. I forgot exactly what it's called. I've been using it just like in my other office, as like I'm just doing my little every morning. It's weird. Down here is where I make stuff. Up there is where I like plan to make it. And so I've been using it up there, and it's been great. It's been great. The keyboard feel is great. The screen is amazing. It's a touch screen. And it's not the super like gacked out to the gills every feature Razer. It's got a lot of the features that they advertise for that, but it's a review unit. It only has 256 gigs of storage in there, and it's only got 16 gigs of RAM, but I believe that is user upgradable as well. So to me, Apple has been open for this kind of trolling for a long time, right? They have been sort of, at least up until a couple of years ago, really sort of deaf to the voice of their customers and doing kind of whatever they wanted to. And then also just becoming what they fought against before, which is the natural progression of things, right? If you're the big guy, then you're going to fight against the little guy, and then the little guy is eventually going to gain ground and going to take over. Apple is the biggest tech company in the world, one of the biggest companies in the world, period. And you can't fault them for what they've been able to do, the usability of their machines and everything else. The iPhone, we can argue until we're blue in the face about whether or not the iPhone or the Android or the whatever, but just from a historical standpoint, I look at this ad and it brings into relief for me the idea that it's been a, what was that, like 25 years ago that ad campaign ran. One of the best ad campaigns ever in the history of advertising. And I think that plus the 1984 Super Bowl ad. I mean, there are moments in Apple advertising history that have really propelled them forward as a company and helped them become what they are now. But to see that ad turned around on them, to me, is just a huge facial. It's just a huge moment of, wow, you didn't see this coming. And regardless of how you feel about that happening from an advertising standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, as I look at this commercial, and so we're all geeks here. We all know all of the ins and all of the outs of all of this different stuff. And we know the history of it. We understand all of this minutia, right? But for the average person who's making a laptop buying decision, right? They aren't going to really understand what it means that the ad is from Intel. They're not. That's neither here nor there. They're not going to know the history of the M1 Macs versus Intel. They're not going to know that a lot of Macs have Intel chips in them anymore. They're not going to know a lot of this stuff. But what they're going to take away is, if they're old enough to remember that ad, they're going to say, "Oh man, they just really sort of came after Apple with their own dude." It's like if Michael Jordan got traded to the Lakers and then won the championship, against the Bulls, right? Um, I, I'd love to see. You know what? I would be really surprised if they didn't have John Hodgman already lined up, unless Apple had some sort of clause in the contract that they had with him when they hired him. I wouldn't be surprised if they had like some version of John Hodgman as the PC, like as like the hip retired guy or something like that. Been there, done that. Now I'm cool and all that kind of thing. So to me, I just think that it's a brilliant move on Intel's part. And Intel's not. No, I guess. Well, people go out and buy Intel chips, but people who might buy a Mac are not generally going to go out and buy an Intel chip off the shelf just for whatever. So to me, this is a great ad. This is a great ad, and I hope it becomes like an entire campaign. I hope that it keeps going. If only because I'm just one of those guys that likes to see the big guy get poked in the eye. Um, so yeah, I that's kind of my take on it. Yes, the M1 Macs are great. Yes, they are going to change the way that we look at computing. They're gonna change computing overall. The speed that you're getting from all of that stuff is way over the top. Is Intel scared for their business? Yes, of course they are. Are they you using their power to be able to come up with something that is entertaining? Yes. So that's when I see people complaining that I mean, people are blowing up portions of the screen and saying, well, that's not this Apple, or that's not this thing. That's missing the point. I mean, yes, if you're an Apple, if I don't know how to say this. I don't want to call people names, but if you're somebody who is an Apple loyalist, how's that? and your job is very much sort of connected to Apple, and Apple has like been your thing for a long time, then yes, I understand that this is frustrating on an intellectual level. Um, it's frustrating on an intellectual level, and you want to point out all the reasons why it's frustrating because the message is mixed. And right here, like so Ride on Time, excuse me. Right on Time says the problem with the ad is there's no pitch about how Intel chips are good. It's PC in general. How is Intel related to the colors of the laptops and dual screens? That's the point. That's the point that I was making before. In advertising, it's not the details, it's the message. Advertising is about emotion. It's not about intellect. And when you find yourself in a position to, I mean, all the common denominator is all of these machines uh, run on Intel chips, I guess, but that's not really the point. You don't really have to have you don't really have to have the intellectual thing right up there at the top. You just have to have the emotional thing. Um, and the thing about that is advertising is not well, advertising is not real. Advertising is about building perceptions. And all that Intel wanted to do with this ad is build the perception that PCs that may or may not contain Intel chips, um, that PCs now have all of these different options, all of these different features, all of this different stuff that you can do, um, that Apple machines don't have. Um, so that's my argument, is that if you went out on the street and played that ad for 50 people, and you said okay, what's this ad about? I guarantee you that 90% or better would say PC versus Mac, right? They would never say anything about Intel. Um, and that's and that's the whole point. Is Intel the right company to be delivering this message? Does it seem somewhat petty for Intel to go down this road? Sure, but it's a parody. It's a thing. Whatever. Um, I, I I give them all kinds of points for the cojones that it takes, or whatever body part you want to put up there, um, and say, okay, well played, well played. Uh, Apple left themselves open to have this happen, and somebody took the opportunity. And to me, it is a parody. It's funny. It's a parody of the initial PC versus Mac. I'm a Mac. I'm a PC commercials. So the reason that it's a parody is because you have to have the understanding of what came before in order to understand the context of this commercial. It's like Weird Al Yankovic songs aren't funny if you don't Eat It is not funny if you don't know Beat It, right? So that's part of the definition of parody. And so these things are parodies. KG Virtu, thank you for the $2 Great British Pound, or the 2 Great British Pounds. I appreciate that highly. So anyway, I mean that's kind of all I wanted to say about it. It is a, to me, a very funny thing. And even though I am mostly an Apple guy, I I'm willing to laugh at Apple's expense, just because this was a great opportunity. Oh, Scottish pounds. I see. But it says B. Aren't you guys still part of Britain? So I guess Britain. Yeah, okay. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But anyway, um, yeah. So I've been kind of watching what you guys had. So that was my take on it. I'm going to shorten this down into a video so I can have my say on this out there somewhere. Um, and yeah, Ace is right here. I mean, when we talk about it, chip versus chip, Intel does not like compare Intel chips versus M1 chips at all. And the same thing goes with AMD and that kind of stuff. I totally agree with that. And yes, I guess you could look at this as well. It's not necessarily clickbait, because clickbait is when you offer somebody the expectation of something, and then you don't deliver on it. You give them something else. Now, with this commercial, it starts out Justin Long on a white backdrop, wearing a sweatshirt and jeans, right? So we assume that he is going, I'm a Mac commercial, but it very quickly segues into not being a commercial about Mac. So it's not necessarily clickbait, but it does kind of have, it does kind of have a little bit of that flavor. Justin Long is a trader. I mean, maybe, I guess. Yeah, he's getting paid. I can't fault him for that. I don't think he's working very much these days. So, Aditya, good morning to you. LMR, good morning. I hope things are well in Brazil there this morning. AMD and Ryzen are probably a bigger problem for Intel. I mean, even though they sell, Intel sells chips to Apple, and that relationship will come to an end eventually. I don't think that that's really their biggest problem. And as somebody else mentioned in the chat before, I think the majority of Intel's business is really elsewhere. Not that desktop computing isn't a big part of their business, but I don't think that they're diversified to such a degree that they put chips in a lot of different things. So, but AMD with their Ryzen chips have really come flying back in the past few years, and are doing things that Intel can't do at this point for cheaper. And to me, that's an existential problem for Intel. I mean, to get down into the weeds of it a little bit, and I can't claim to understand. I can't claim to understand a ton of all of this stuff, but I know that that Intel's not been able to push their technology forward to 5 nanometer. Correct me if I'm wrong. Although that's been the goal for many years at this point. So, yeah, but I, I've got 2 Intel PCs. They work fine. I've built AMD machines before, but not Ryzen machines. I have an M1 Mac over there. It is very impressive. There are still some growing pains going on that, I think for anybody who works with their computer on a professional level, if they're not just doing, basic word processing and sort of productivity stuff, I still think there are things that need to get ironed out with the M1 Max, but nobody can deny their overall superiority in performance. That's just the way it is. I mean, when people like iJustine and Max Tech and other people are benchmarking these things one against the other, and the M1 chips in the 13-inch MacBook Pro are outperforming. I think iJustine said that she has an $80,000. She has an $80,000 Mac Pro, and the M1 Mac it is at least comparable, if not better, which is crazy. Now, does she sit down and edit all of her videos on the M1 Mac? I don't think so. But that's because everything on the Intel platform has been a lot more, sort of ironed out and a lot more stable than it was than the M1s are right now. Not to say that they won't be sometime soon. And Hugo's right. I mean, the average computer user doesn't care about the difference between an i7 and a Ryzen 9 or an M1 or any of those kinds of things. They want their computer to turn on and to do it, as fast as it possibly could, and to do the things that they wanted to do as fast as it possibly can. Now, it's once you get into the professional aspects of computers that help people do their work, right? If you have to have a powerful computer to do your work, that's when you get into the weeds, and then all of the finer details, the amount of RAM, the graphics card, the CPU, all of that stuff starts to matter to you as a professional. But until then, like, it's not that big a deal. I mean, my wife, I got her a what was it? Is it Lenovo? Yeah, a Yoga 13-inch machine with an i5 in it, and it's at least 3 years old now, and it runs like the day that we bought it, and it's perfect for her. It works great, and she has no complaints about it. So and I always love like talking about this stuff, because people get into their emotions. Well, part of the problem about getting my wife one of the new MacBooks, and I'm sure it's fine now, but she works in nonprofit, and a lot of nonprofits, or at least the ones that I've had contact with, that she's worked for, a lot of them, they don't use regular desktop CPUs. Like, everything is on a network. So your version of Windows and everything that you have that would be on a computer traditionally is networked. And she has had trouble in the past using Macs to open up the gateway that she needs to open up to get to her quote unquote work computer. So we haven't tried a Mac for several years at this point. Although I do believe we tried. Well, actually, no, we didn't try a MacBook before, because that was back in the days when MacBooks were still incredibly expensive. And I think this Yoga cost like $800 or $900, which, I mean, you're not going to get a Mac in that, in that era. You're not getting a MacBook for that price that has the features, et cetera, et cetera. So she's been a PC person from pretty much all of her professional career, and I don't know that she would want to change, although she used to be an Android person, and excuse me, I need one of those mute buttons. She used to be an Android person, and I convinced her to get an iPhone several years back. She has an iPhone XS Max or Plus or whatever it is back then. And so she like grudgingly, she liked having the widgets that she could put on her screen with her calendar and all that kind of stuff. And this was pre iOS 14, obviously. But I browbeat her into getting an iPhone. So she got it. And then when the Note 20 came out last year, the one that was $1,000 and was too expensive for for actual purchasing, but I got it to review and I still had it, and I wanted her I wanted to give her back her Android. She always liked Notes. So I gave her the Note 20 and she used it for a week and she's like, I want my iPhone back. And she's lucky I hadn't sold it already. I guess I could have gotten her another one, but yeah. Um, she definitely she likes the Macs now, or the iPhones. I need more coffee. I'm telling you. We got a question here. Been thinking about the M1 Mac Mini, just the 8 gigabyte 256 version. Do you think you need to get 16 and up the hard drive? I don't think you need to get the 16, but I do think you need to get the 512. Because once you look at the operating system and the space that takes up, and all the other doodads that go into the computer, you're really looking at, like, losing a significant amount of that 256 gigabytes, maybe a third of that 256 gigabytes, which doesn't leave you a lot to install programs, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I would go for the 512. I know it's $200 extra, but you don't need the extra unless you're going to do like super heavy CAD lifting or whatever it is. You don't need the extra horsepower from the RAM, but the 512 would be the way to go for sure. Yeah, and I guess Hitchhiker's saying here that we've been hearing that there's a potential for an M1X Mac Mini that's going to come out in April, and I'm kind of excited for that. Although I'm back on one of my kicks now where I'm kind of tempted to just like go to Windows for a bit. Maybe it's just I don't know. People get mad at me when I flip flop back and forth between Mac and Windows and between Android and iPhones, but the thing that's really frustrating is each of them do some things very well. None of them do everything very well. So no matter what choice you make, you're always going to be losing something. And so it's just a matter of like, do I feel like I want to lose? I don't. Macs seem to be better on the creative side, but Windows is getting better. I don't, and it could be April. I mean, I guess we could talk also about like how Apple turned around as Apple was being trolled by Intel with these commercials. The Apple turned around and trolled like a lot of the more well-known Apple leakers this week. So the big story was, and this has been going around for several weeks, was that there was going to be an Apple event this month on the 23rd of this month. And it turns out that was never the case. But the thought is that Apple put that out there to see if they could figure out like where the leak was going and who the leakers were talking to. And this coming on the heels of Apple suing one of their former employees for what I imagine will be quite a bit of money for leaking stuff as well. This is maybe not a good time to be an Apple leaker. I mean, to me, it's a very tenuous tenuous profession. So, but yeah, I mean, John Prosser is a good friend of mine. He had to, well, I don't know if he actually did any mea culpas, but he had to admit that he didn't have the right information, and other people who leaked the same information didn't have the right information, and that it seemed like it came to them with intent to, yeah. So, let's see, scroll back here. Somebody asked if I use like both the Razer and the M1. Here it is. And yes, I do use the Razer and the M1. And I don't now it's become sort of the same thing as like Android versus iOS, or not Android phones versus iPhones, in that Android phones use their hardware differently. They achieve what they achieve in a different way, right? And Windows laptops are kind of the same. Windows machines in general, but if we're talking laptops, Windows laptops do their thing differently. I mean, the amount of power that you can get in a Windows laptop these days, and I'm talking like pure brute strength, as opposed to like, the M1 Mac kind of strikes me as if we want to use sports metaphor, kind of strikes me as a sprinter. They like can really get stuff done very quickly. Heavy lifting, maybe not as much, but then if you look at like these Razer blades, like the one that I have has a 2070 in it, and you can max it out at 128 gigabytes of storage, or RAM, I'm sorry. And then this one came with 512 NVMe, and I put another 2 terabytes in it. And yes, the Razer machines are expensive, but when you consider that kind of customizability compared to a Mac, I mean, it's a different thing altogether. The new Razer laptops have 30 series chips in them. So for all of you who can't get a 30 series desktop card, I mean, maybe that's worth thinking about. But I like them both on their own. And I've kind of found that it's not really worthwhile to compare one to the other. Now, if I'm using a Windows laptop for something and it just isn't doing it efficiently or whatever, I have the opportunity to go over to the other side and use that machine. Not everybody does. And so I don't have to necessarily like spend the time fixing the one and only computer that I have to get it to do the thing that I need it to do. So I'm in a very privileged position when it comes to how I use my computers, right? I've never found a PC laptop that I liked as well aesthetically as I do Macs. But then the Razers have kind of changed that for me. And now we have a special guest joining us now, who is going to give us a little bit of his feedback. We're going to bring him in right now, as long as I can press the right place on my. Here he is. Here he is, the man about tech, one and only Mr. Viper, on his lunch break, and coming to us live from the workplace. What's going on, man?
What's happening, Jason? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Trying to find your stream. Here we go. I got it. Now we're good. There we go. Awesome. I see you were enjoying the beverage there, sir.
Oh, yes. You got me a little coffee in my Beatles mug. I'm always afraid to, like when I bought this mug, the guy I bought it at Guitar Center. The guy that worked there that sold it to me is like, you shouldn't buy these mugs. There's lead in the paint. I'm like, that's not good. But
Listen,
it's a cool mug. So
everybody always has something to say about everything. Like I'm just over it at this point.
Yeah, I hear you. We got the man about tech, the one and only Mr. Viper. Now we've already talked some about the Intel ad. I know you have your own thoughts. So tell us what you think about the whole thing.
Well, it's like I told you on Twitter earlier. It's kind of ironic that Intel is making these anti-Mac ads when most of the Macs that Apple sells still have Intel chips in them. So what exactly are you trying to do here, Intel? And then it's just the whole thing about if they spent as much time making their chips better as they do on these little cheesy ads, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation today. It wouldn't be an issue. But I think for whatever reason they choose not to spend the time making their chips better. Here we are.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of the problem is they've been stuck. Like for a while, people thought that they were just kind of like holding back and not releasing, like the best that they could do. They were just kind of like bringing out stuff. But I think at this point they've hit like some kind of technological wall that they can't get over.
Clearly.
And unfortunately, unfortunately, Apple sort of was this is kind of the reverse of PowerPC chip versus Intel. When Apple made that shift, the Intel chips were after the growing pains much more superior. But now we've got these M1 chips that clearly run rings around what Intel's able to do in terms of processing power, et cetera, et cetera. But one point that I made just a few minutes ago was that, I kind of look at the M1 chips, they're kind of like sprinters, like you can get from one place to the other really quickly and like tasks can get done really fast, but they don't have the kind of brute strength that like a full-on desktop with a full-size graphics card, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that they match up in that category, but at the end of the day, like I said earlier, and I said to you on Twitter, it's like the average person is going to look at that ad. They're going to have no idea that it has anything to do with Intel. They're just going to remember those Mac PC ads from back in the day, and they're going to see the Mac guy talking about PCs. And they'll get the joke, and it'll stick with them. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but you realize that the average person doesn't have tech friends like me and you, and we're going to tell them what's really going on. We're going to give them the real talk. So there's that. But Jason, I want to talk about something that I don't think many people have talked about yet. I think I've seen it a little bit, but not really much. The ironic thing about these ads, Jason, is that the M1 MacBook isn't even Intel's biggest competitor right now. Intel should be more worried about AMD. AMD is coming for their lunch. They're worried about Apple, and AMD about to take everything from them. Like, what are you doing, Intel? Focus on AMD, because AMD is your closest threat right now.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that someone in like the ad agency that Intel uses saw some low hanging fruit there. Like I was kind of surprised when Justin Long wasn't in the end of the M1 presentation. They brought John Hodgman back, but they didn't bring him back, and I was kind of like, why is he not there? And I think somebody in Intel's like PR department or whatever was like, hey, let's see if we can get him, and we'll just make a funny commercial, and I don't know, maybe divert some attention away from the fact that AMD is eating our lunch.
You know what that was? I'm gonna guess that Justin Long probably wanted too much money, and Apple didn't want to pay him, and Intel probably backed up the Brinks truck to Justin, and he did his thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just goes to show, man. Sometimes you just you got to pay the man sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, and jokingly, I think someone on the chat here earlier said Justin Long was a traitor for making this ad, and I mean, I don't know how he felt about Macs in the first place when he made the first, however many ads they made. I think they made like 20 ads for those things. But I mean, he's an actor, right?
Yeah, he can make money, right?
And that's the difference. Like, if you or I made a commercial where we were like, this is the way to go, but then whatever it was that we were being paid to talk about didn't pay us and their competitor did, I mean, that ruins our credibility.
Yeah, we can do that, right?
But Justin Long doesn't really. I mean, he's playing a character. So
he's a mercenary, pretty much.
Yeah, he's playing a character. It's not him. It's not his right. Personal view. I mean, it may coincide with his personal views, but it's not him. It's a character. And I mean, I guess he could have said like, oh well, you know, I don't want to do that for, you know, whatever reasons. But I don't think Justin Long's working very much these days.
I
So
don't think so either. But the real crux, because like this wasn't, it wasn't just this one ad from Intel. Apparently they're doing ads, they're doing web pages, they're doing other types of advertisement up
yeah,
against this. They're on a whole anti-Apple campaign, and it's just them from the breakup. Because remember, Jason, 2 years ago, when Intel failed to meet the 5G chip demand for future iPhones, Intel had to bow out of the cellular modem game. Apple ended up buying Intel's cellular modem business, so there's
yeah,
some of that involved. And now we're talking about Apple moving away from Intel chips to their own Apple Silicon. So Intel is all types of butthurt right now, for real.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I guess I can understand that. Although you'd hope that somebody who ran like a global however many $billion company could like not get butthurt over
You would
something.
think so, wouldn't you? But
Yeah.
we are in 2021. This is the age of the butthurt right now.
Oh, I know. And I mean, and Septian, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. And he's right. AMD is coming for the like breakfast, lunch, dinner, afternoon snack, midnight snack, you know, like ice cream. They're coming for the whole deal when it comes to Intel right now. And the thing is, like, I don't know if Intel can like turn it around. You know what I mean?
Not on their current business model, because the other thing about it is that as we move towards a more cloud computing, mobile computing phase of our existence here, AMD is already rocking the space. They're killing it with the mobile chips and things like that.
Yep.
And Intel is not really in the space too much. So how can they transition their pretty much their aging business model to fit a new mobile technological world? So
Right.
they got to figure that out too.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. You know, I mean, like I said, on one hand, I applaud Intel for taking the opportunity to take the piss out of Apple a little bit, because I mean,
let's be real. That's what you're happy about. You're happy about Intel going after Apple.
Well, because Apple seems to like, people seem to pay a lot of deference to Apple. You know, Samsung makes themselves look stupid when they make these commercials about Apple, and then they turn around and 6 months later do what Apple did.
Oh my goodness. Oh
like
my.
that's hypocritical. But
yeah,
you know, I do like to see somebody give Apple a little bit of its own what for. You know what I'm saying? So
clearly.
So I just like a good a good controversy, a good humored controversy is what I like. We got Septian with another $3.99 super chat saying Intel is hemorrhaging money at this point. I mean, who's not at this point?
They're
But yeah,
thinking. That ship is thinking right now, and they got to figure out how to right the ship, but it's thinking fast.
well, it'll be interesting. Like, I don't know the extent of how diversified their whole company is, like where they provide chips to whom and how much that takes up their business, as opposed to like the most public facing aspect, which is the core series chips, right? I don't know what they do otherwise, and how much that floats their boat. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's not looking good. You don't want to lose like the most at least the most visible part of your business. That you don't want to give the impression that that's going south. So it's funny though. And then here's one thing that's humored me a little bit is, like, I figured when I saw that commercial, I figured people would be like, kind of laugh it off. Oh, that's funny. You know, Intel did that. But there are some people who are like really butthurt over this commercial. You know, they're like kind of digging into the screenshots and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's just an ad. It's supposed to be funny. And and they're not making like, see, if Intel was making claims that weren't accurate, then that's one thing. But they're not really making any claims. They're just kind of being very general about stuff, right? So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, when like you got to understand. I mean, just yeah, you don't have to. You already understand, Jason, that Apple, the people, a lot of people that follow Apple is like a cult. So
Oh yeah.
if you are seen as going after the cult, then they're going to come for your neck, as you well know how that goes with Apple
I
and people that
do.
go after Apple. So,
As you look at all the Apple products on Karan's desk.
but yeah, if you go after Apple, I mean, people are going to be key. So, I mean, you just gotta, I mean, you gotta brace yourself for the impact. But
Yeah.
I don't know what these commercials do for Intel. I mean, other than being petty, what do they do for Intel as far as money, bottom line? I don't think they're going to do much for their bottom line.
You know, I don't know if it's going to do much for the bottom line so much as it's like, you know, a lot of public relations and advertising and marketing is about perception, right? So I think it at least gives Intel like a face, right? And people get in a perception about it. The original Apple ads, right, where it was I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, most definitely gave a the perception that Apple was the up and coming underdog that was like, you know, saying what for about the, you know, the big dogs. And so while Intel isn't necessarily doing that, they're at least coming out and showing themselves as like, you know, kind of irreverent, kind of willing to, you know, take the piss on you know, on a company, something like that. So I think it's a perception thing more than anything else. I don't think it's going to win them any business so much as it's just going to change people's perception. You know, does that make sense?
It makes sense, but usually these big corporations, everything that they do is calculated to like affect their bottom line. And
Yeah.
we both agree that these commercials are not going to affect Intel bottom line. So at this point, they're literally wasting money on these ads because we both agree that it's not going to affect the needle as far as the money that Intel makes. They're not making any money off of They're not making any money off these commercials anymore. They're going to lose money because they're not going to do anything for them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm sure they have some strategy, whether it's a good one or not. Isaac Oz here with the $4.99 super chat. And this is a YouTube related super chat. Remember the optimal average view duration to get recommended? I mean, I think that the average view duration is usually like if you can get around the 50% line, then that's kind of where you want to be. But I don't know that there's any specific number. We lost you, but you're back.
Yeah, I got a call.
So, yeah, see, like this is a lot of people have been saying this. Intel should be trolling AMD because they're getting killed by them right now. I don't know that Intel has anything they can say about AMD though.
Nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing.
AMD is like living rent free inside of Intel's brain right now. So
AMD is just taking everything from Intel at this point.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit. Quick little transition over to the other big topic of discussion for today, which of course is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Ooh, oh my God! Did you watch it?
I did.
Oh God! Masterpiece, man, masterpiece.
Well, so tell me what you liked about it the most.
So I watched it all the way through, the whole 4-hour thing, and
Yeah,
it
me
was
too.
absolutely amazing, front to back. It was so good that it didn't even seem like it was 4 hours. Like it seemed like it was just a regular 2-hour movie when I was done. The only part I really didn't enjoy was the epilogue with the Batman dreaming. Well, I won't give it too much away, but the epilogue it was a little wonky. But other than that, everything else was like, bottom, magnifico.
Yeah, so I on the Painfully Honest podcast that I've been doing, I did an episode on how, I enjoy watching superhero movies, but a lot of times I don't really they don't really stick with me. If I watch them a second time, then I get a little frustrated because there's not a lot of character development. The plot is always kind of just like on rails, and it's just kind of like the formula. And the thing that frustrates me a lot about especially movies where the characters are already well known. Like I think a lot of times movie studios bank on us basically knowing who Superman is, who Batman is, who Wonder Woman is, you know, and they sort of infer character development instead of actually doing it, because doing it takes time, right? And so like and that's one of the things that like was really great about the Wonder Woman movie, the first one, not the second one. You know, they developed her character. They gave her emotional stakes and things that you know, things that she wanted and what she had in the game. You know, she wasn't just like she didn't just like drop out of the sky and help win World War One. You know, there was a lot there for her as a character. Same thing with what I think is the best superhero movie of all time at this point, Logan. I mean, talk about character development was all over the place. And yes, I think a lot of it was helped by how well we knew those characters to begin with. But I just look at that movie as being about those characters and not about the other stuff.
Yeah, I
You know?
mean, the way they split it up in chapters, outside of Batman and Superman, it looked like every Justice League character got their own chapter to develop their character. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I really liked about it, was that some people are going to complain like, oh, it didn't have to be 4 hours, right? Why did it have to be 4 hours? But as I was watching it, I was really sensitive to, is this going to feel like, you know, a 3 hour thing with another hour of filler? Or is it going to, you know, it's very rare that you get a 4 hour movie that feels like it warranted 4 hours.
That one does. Like I said, the only thing I didn't really agree with, and I'm not gonna get too deep into it, is the epilogue. Some of that stuff probably could have been cut out, but I don't really have a problem with it overall. Somebody in the chat was asking, what did I think about or do we think about the 4:3 aspect ratio? I ended up watching it on my 65-inch LG TV, and I forgot about the aspect ratio after the first hour. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah, I remember when I was I LG or TCL sent me a brand new TV to review. So I was setting that up. I set it up the other day, but I hadn't signed into Disney Plus yet or HBO Max. So I signed into HBO Max and I just wanted to make sure everything was cool. So I went to watch the trailer, and this would have been Tuesday. Went to watch the trailer, and the trailer was in 4:3. And I kept thinking like I accidentally hit some kind of button on my remote control that that changed the aspect ratio, because I've done that before, you know. So I thought that I had like pressed some button, and then I had to like back out and go to something that I knew was in 16:9. But once I got into it last night, it looked weird at first. But once I got into it last night, yeah, the 4:3 didn't bother me at all. I mean, maybe it would have been better at 2:1, but I guess what I read was it was shot with IMAX in mind.
Yeah.
And so I guess the aspect ratio of IMAX is more to that 4:3 than the 16:9. So I get, and so yeah, it didn't bother me at all. Aditya with the $4.99 super chat says, "You're not a man if you didn't cry after watching Logan." Well, I'm emotionally unstable in the first place, so of course I cried. but yeah, Wolverine's been my favorite Marvel character for a long time. So
just let Zack Snyder do all the DC movies. Just let him don't mess with him. Just let him do what he wants to do.
And he's saying that that's the last one, but I have a feeling like with the reception that this movie is getting,
yeah,
and I mean there were no stakes. There was nothing at stake for him in terms of making this movie. The Joss Whedon one was terrible. Everybody agreed. When you watch it the second time, you can see the stitches where he put his stuff in and took out the Zack Snyder stuff. So the only thing that Zack Snyder could do, I mean, he was in a perfect position from the standpoint of like creativity, people just wanted to see what he would have done, right? And it looked like
he did it.
he just had carte blanche to like
Yep.
make the movie that he would have made if nobody told him to cut it down to 2 hours.
He did his thing.
Yeah.
Did you see on Twitter, Jason, that apparently at the very end of the credits of this movie, Zack Snyder sent a special message to Josh?
I watched to the end, but I was watching for like an extra scene, so I didn't.
I was too.
So maybe I'll have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, you'll miss it because I didn't look. I just happened to see somebody mention it on Twitter, but apparently at the very last end of the credit, at the very bottom, like in small letters, he left a special message that I can't repeat on air to Josh.
The thing is, like, he claims that he has not seen the theatrical release. I don't know. I don't know though. I mean, I understand the feeling of like, this was my baby. I worked on it for however many years he worked on it, and then he had to let it go, and he doesn't want to relive the pain. But at the same time, I think after a couple of years, the curiosity would get the best of me, and I'd have to take a look. And yeah, but he claims he hasn't seen it. But I mean, it's been a bad year for Joss Whedon. It's been a bad couple of years,
just a little bit.
Which I mean, I've liked a lot of stuff that Joss Whedon has done, but if you're a trash human being, then
you're a trash human being.
Yeah. So yeah, and Alejandro brings up the point that like the reason Zack Snyder had to step away was such a tragic, difficult thing in the first place. His daughter committed suicide, and I mean, I can't imagine I can't imagine that as something that would happen in your life, nor would I imagine like something that you're so like creatively invested in, walking away from that at like the last hour. I mean, I'm surprised they came back to it at all, to be honest with you. I guess I think it was dedicated to his daughter, this cut of the film. And yeah, Alejandro Aditya brings up that Zack Snyder's wife, Deborah, who co-produces and everything like that with him, saw the theatrical thing and told him not to watch it. Yeah. So,
well, I think he's going to get a lot of love after this movie, and I think that if DC wants him to do another movie, they will pay him whatever the hell he wants. And
I kind of feel like Zack Snyder has gotten a little bit of a bad rap over the years, right? Because I mean, he came out 300 was such a huge hit, and we'd never seen anything like that in terms of just like the way it was filmed, with the super hyper realistic, almost cartoonish look, and then he made Watchmen, and a lot of people didn't like Watchmen, but Watchmen's like my favorite comic ever. And I've read it, I've taught it. I love that book. And he did such a good job of staying true to that book. Like, a lot of it is like a frame by frame, panel by panel recreation of the comic, right? And he got a lot of his reputation took a lot of hits because he wasn't commercially successful, and then most of his movies are ultra violent. And like I thought Watchmen was great. I thought Man of Steel was great. I really liked. I mean, it's not my favorite movie in the world, but I really liked Batman versus Superman.
I like the Ultimate Edition, not the theatrical one. No.
Yeah, so he's kind of. I'm glad to see him, be in a position to get some of the credit that I think he is due for the work that he does.
Definitely. Hopefully he makes more moves in the future, but I think some people in the chat don't agree. But I guess time will tell. You'd be surprised what money can do, you all. Just saying. But Jason, I gotta head out. Thank you for having me, sir. I will talk to you soon.
All right, man. Peace. Talk to you soon. All right, Mr. Viper, back for a little conversation. Even if you're KG, I would say even though you're not a comic person, I would recommend reading this book. Like this is the only. I mean, I know they call it a graphic novel, but it's a comic book. The only comic book that was included in Time Magazine's 100 best novels of the 20th century. And it's not just like it's not just because like they felt like they had to put something in. It is an amazingly good book, and still like highly relevant today, even though it was written in the early 80s, which is both a testament to, you know, the universality of art, but also to how much things change and they stay the same. So I haven't seen Legends of the Guardian. Like I'm gonna have to go back and have myself a little Zack Snyder film festival. Because yeah, I'm just glad to see him, you know, through having gone through difficult personal stuff, and kind of had, you know, I think that the success of the MCU, sort of overshadowed Zack Snyder. And like the way that Zack Snyder makes films is so antithetical to the sort of lightheartedness of a lot of the MCU movies, that I think in the public perception, Zack Snyder's DC movies kind of suffered for that. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm seeing people talk about, like in the chat, people are talking about Instagram and WhatsApp being down. I don't know. I mean, they're both owned by Facebook, right? So maybe there's a problem over there in Facebook land. Yeah, I start with 300 and just like do 5 or 6 Zack Snyder movies. I'm probably forgetting some of his movies because I just, you know, I remember the ones that I really liked, like 300, Watchmen, Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, etc., etc. So yeah. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. But I have to go do like adult things now. I have to take my daughter places and that kind of thing. But thank you guys for hanging out and doing the stream. Thanks for the boisterous discussion as always. Thanks to Viper for stopping by and talking for a few minutes. Dawn of the Dead. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, guys, girls, people, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. Once again, you know who I am. Sponsored by Restream. Did you ever think you'd see me like sponsored t-shirt? Bow. But Restream sponsors all of these live streams, and they are fantastic. And you can get a discount on signing up for Restream by using the link down in the description below. Restream allows you to stream to like 30 different platforms all at one time. And they're sponsoring Painfully Honest Tech, so that should tell you something. Anyway, love you guys. Take care. Talk to you soon. Once again, my name is Jason. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. Until the next time, I'm out.